on this fabulous Wednesday, we get to do the next step on our first awesome writing project here in second grade. So let's take a look at what that next step is with our learning goal. It says, I can create an outline for my personal narrative using my storyboard. So our first writing project is that personal narrative, where we get to tell our own story. And on Monday, we made our own storyboard that told the story of our personal narrative with, of course, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Today, we are going to use this drawing of our storyboard to do the next step of the writing process, which is an outline. We are still in the planning stage of our writing, but an outline is the next step. We're going to go from our drawings to writing in words and sentences. An outline is a guide for our writing. It breaks down the paragraph we're going to write in smaller chunks. Eventually, we're going to add to this outline and write it as a paragraph to have our final project. But this outline is just what we're going to do first to make sure we have all our parts before we start writing. That beginning, middle, and the end. So the outline is the next step we're working on today. And as we know, all of us are writing about that all-important micro moment, that small one-time event that's happened. Some of us on our storyboard, we're still a little too big. Remember, it's going to be smaller than my trip to Knott's. You got to narrow it down to one rhyme. Or my big trip to the mall. You have to narrow it down to one store you went to. Remember, we're doing a micro moment so we can write a lot of detail just about one thing. So we can really show our reader this story that happened to us. So Super Scholars, when we're writing our outline, we are still going to remember all the important parts of a story, the beginning, middle, and the end. Let's remind ourselves what we're going to include in each part that we write. So in the beginning, that was the first box in your storyboard. The beginning introduces the event, characters, and the setting. In the beginning of our story, we're going to include all those parts to really set the stage and tell our reader what this story is about. In the middle part of our story, we have to tell the action in order. We have to go from what happened first to last, exactly how it happened in real life. So for example, first in my driver's test, I started by making that awesome left turn, but then I tried to drive with the parking brake on, which was not good. But my left turn came before my mistake. And we need to make sure we're telling that in order. And then lastly, at the end, we have to tell how the story ends. My story had a happy ending because I passed my driver's test. That was a success, and it ended this story for the time being. So just as our storyboard included each important part of a story, we're going to have to make sure we write all this information on our outline to help us when we start officially writing our project. So, with your storyboard and the knowledge of beginning, middle, and end, I need you to get out this page called Resource Page 3. This was in your last packet. It says Resource Page 3 on the top, and it says Story Plan right here. There's your name, and there's a couple boxes. This is the page you are going to need today. This worksheet is going to be our plan or our outline of what we're going to write about for our personal narrative. We are going to be working box by box or part by part of our story. You are going to need to be ready to pause this video to work on your own, because we're going to write my beginning of the story, then you're going to write yours. Then we'll write my middle of the story, then you will write yours. So make sure you are ready to pause and work while you're watching this video. Okay, Super Scholars, let's start creating our outline for our story. So, we can take a look at our storyboard as we're writing this. So for the beginning, can you read what it says right here? Who, when, and where. We want to include all these important things in the story. The who is the characters, the when is what time it happens, where is the setting, and of course we need to include what we're talking about. So I want us to start with the when in our story. Usually in fairy tales it starts with once upon a time or on a dark night. We want to set the stage and talk about when this story happened. So for me, I took my driver's test way late than you're supposed to. I took it my senior year of college. So I'm going to put that as the first part of my outline. I'm including the when, and I'm giving my reader an idea of when this story happened. So I'm going to write during my senior year of college, comma. So I'm including my when and I'm setting the scene for my reader. So I have my comma. So during my senior year of college, what did I do? I took my driver's test. That's the event. I took my driving test. Okay, that's the event, and I have who did it? I did it. Let's say where. Where did I take my driver's test? In West Seattle. So I didn't take my driver's test here in LA. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in West Seattle, so I need to make sure I write that in my story. Okay, what does this first sentence say? During my senior year of college, I took my driving test in West Seattle. That includes a lot of detail in the beginning of my story. I have my when, I have my who, I have what I did, and where I took it. All that information can be included in one sentence to introduce to my reader as much new information as possible. Okay, so I have the beginning of my personal narrative written. We're going to be writing sentences on this outline to prepare us for when we're going to write our entire paragraph. So right now, Super Scholars, I want you to take this story plan page and I want you to write a beginning sentence for your personal narrative. Look at what you drew on your storyboard. You have all the information right here. Now you just need to write it out in words. So take the time right now, go ahead, include all this information, who, when, where, and what. Just write out one sentence and then come back to do the next part of our outline. Okay, here you go. Okay, so I've been paused and you just wrote the beginning part of your outline. Up next, we are going to look at the middle. We're going to look at the middle. Those were these two boxes on your storyboard. We have two events that happen. So here we're going to write two sentences in the middle. Guess what? These two sentences aren't going to be all you're going to write, but this is an outline. So it's just a start. So right here, let's see, middle, what does it say? What happened first, next, and so on. These words, first and next, are called transition words. Can you say that with me? Transition words. Transition words. They move one part of the story to the next. We want to use these kind of words to show our reader the order of our events. So, I'm starting here. This is the first event, so I'm going to use the word first. First, drove and made a good left turn. Okay, I'm going to make sure to write that down. First, I drove and made a good left turn. So I just described the first image in the middle part of my storyboard. And I made sure to include this transition word to show that this happened first in the order. Okay, let me read it. First, I drove and made a good left turn. Okay, that describes exactly what I drew on my storyboard. So now let's look at this next event. This is what happened next. After I made a good left turn, what I did next was I made a mistake and drove with the parking brake on. So I'm able to describe my picture and then write it as a sentence. I'm using this word next to show this is the next thing that happened in order. So next, I made a mistake and drove with the, ooh, it's a long sentence, with the parking brake on. Okay, let's read that next part I wrote. Next, I made a mistake and drove with the parking brake on. Okay, Super Scholars, so what I just did is I wrote 2 sentences for each middle part of my storyboard. I made sure to use first and next to show what events happened in what order. So now what you're going to do, I need you to write 2 sentences in the middle part of your outline that describes the 2 events you drew on your storyboard. Of course, make sure you have complete sentences. Say it first out loud and then write it down immediately. Okay, I want you to take some time, go ahead and fill out the middle part of your outline. Here we go. Pause. We are back and ready to write the final part of our outline, which is, of course, the end. That is the last part of your storyboard where we are going to tell how the story ended. Let's read what it says here. What happened last, how it ended, and what you thought, felt, or learned. So many of you, when you were talking about your storyboard, you were telling me your feelings, how this event made you feel, which is perfect. We want to include those in our personal narrative. So we are going to write 2 sentences for our ending. One, we're going to talk about what was the last thing that happened, and 2, we're going to talk about how did you feel? What did you think about at the end of your story? Okay, so for me, finally, or at the end, I passed my driver's test. That's how this story ended. So let's write that. Here we go. I'm going to say, in the end, that's a transition phase. You could also say finally or at last. In the end, I passed my driver's test. Okay, this is the last event that happened in my story. So now I'm going to include how it made me feel. I felt very excited. So I didn't just put happy, I put a more interesting word, and I said I felt very excited. Because I was excited means I didn't have to take the test again. So let's read what I wrote. In the end, I passed my driver's test. I felt very excited. Both of these are complete sentences, but they tell about 2 different parts of the story. The last event, and then how I felt. So what you are going to do now is the exact same thing. You're going to look at your ending part of your storyboard, and tell the last event that happened and then how it made you feel. Then you're going to write exactly what you said right down in this last part of your outline. Make sure you're writing in complete sentences. Okay, are you ready to finish this outline? Okay, take your time. Here you go. Pause. Okay, you are back, and congratulations, you have just finished your first official writing outline. Each part we have filled out for beginning, middle, and end. This is an awesome start to our personal narrative. This isn't all we're going to write, but it's going to get us started and give us an idea for when we start writing it on lined paper. So, Super Scholars, what I need you to do is take an awesome picture of your story outline so I can see what you wrote. I want to see exactly how you translated your storyboard into an outline with complete sentences. So, before you turn it in, I want you to read it one last time to make sure every sentence has a naming, a noun, and a telling, a verb part. You have the responsibility as a writer to read your work multiple times to check that it's the best it can possibly be. Okay, second grade, congratulations on finishing the next part of the writing process. Make sure to take that awesome picture so I can see your great work.